Hi, everyone. Welcome to One Degree Hotter's Student Stories segment. I'm so excited to be here with you all today because there are so many different ways to go about pursuing your education, but we often only hear the typical story. You graduate high school, move away for college, graduate in 4 years, and you get a job right out of college. But that story has never been the only story, and it's becoming less and less common. I want to share real student stories that you can learn from. That way, you're empowered with knowing that there are many ways about getting 1 degree hotter. Today, I'm so excited to have a great friend of mine join us. My dear friend Irving Figueroa is a Navy veteran, technology specialist, dad, amazing dancer, and so many more things. Irving's story has inspired me because it's one of many twists and turns, changing your mind, making smart decisions, and ultimately bringing all of your education together, even if that's not what most people do. I'll have Irving tell us more about his story in his own words, but if you have ever worried about the twists and turns of your own educational journey, you're going to want to stick around. Irving, welcome. So excited
Thank
to have you here. And so excited to reconnect. I actually used to live with Irving and his wife a long time ago, and we have a really fun story of how we all met, but that's for another time. All that to say, we're very close. So, Irving, thanks again for being here. I'm so excited to hear your story. Let's just get started already. Tell me a bit about yourself.
About myself, Mexican American. I was born and raised in California in the Bay Area. As you mentioned earlier, I am a U.S. Navy veteran. I'm also a commercial pilot and flight instructor. And my wife and I are also a two-time World Latin Dance Cup champion in bachata.
Hey,
So that's a little bit of a small snapshot about myself.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, is there anything that Irving doesn't do? I don't know. Let's start from the very beginning. I'd love to know a bit about your K through 12 education. What was that like when you were in elementary, middle, and high school?
Mm, K through 12, I think probably looks like what I assume a lot of my fellow Latinos' childhoods look like. My mom, for the most part, raised my brother and I on her own for the majority of growing up. So my brother and I transferred a lot to different
Mhm.
schools around the area. We even, for a little bit, moved to a different state altogether and went to school there briefly before coming back to California. So I think my memories growing up are kind of in snippets and just maybe like core memories rather than what I know a lot of other people have is like, I had this long, term friend I met in kindergarten. I didn't necessarily have that.
Gotcha.
The growing up and constantly moving, I think brought a lot of its own challenges, one of them being actually making friends.
Yeah.
So I found myself actually hanging out with my brother and his friends more often than not.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me start asking you about college in that case. What did you learn about going to college when you were young?
I really didn't start thinking about college really until the last minute in high school. I think the idea was very heavily pushed on me that you need to go to college immediately after high school. Otherwise, you're going to be a bum. And, to be brutally honest, my mother in the tail end of my youth growing up for myself and the rest of my siblings to go to college. With the recession that happened, that plan wasn't there anymore. So I had to quickly pivot and think of alternative options for what I wanted to do.
So you had heard that like you had to go to college after high school, otherwise like your life was going to be a disaster. And I think a lot of people hear that. It's not necessarily true. Obviously, as a college advisor, I always encourage it, but it's just not the path for everyone. Or pursuing an education after high school can look like a lot of different things. And I think you're a great example of that. But we'll get into those details in a little bit. So that's what you learned about college growing up. You mentioned arriving to the end of high school and thinking about college last minute and then having to pivot because of your family situation. So you ended up taking a path after high school that wasn't college. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think the recession had one part to play with that into me pivoting. The other thing, if I'm being honest about myself, is I wasn't necessarily the best student growing up.
Mhm.
Uh, so as I was reaching the end of high school, I was honest with myself and knew that I didn't necessarily have a plan just yet for what I wanted to do with college, even if I were to go. Uh,
Mhm.
so my brother had recently joined the military, and I saw that as a means to kind of start to take a step forward for myself, for bettering myself, while I also give myself time to figure out what it was I wanted to do.
Mhm.
It was something that was there. I also left my parents' house on my 18th birthday.
Mm.
So I was pretty much kind of figuring out as I went.
Yeah.
And my senior year of high school, I'm pretty much on my own. So the military kind of provided that stability for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. That is definitely an option that people can take. And I think it sounds like you wanted some time to figure things out, and taking time in whatever way, whether it's a gap year or working, is always an option. So I appreciate you sharing that you took some time to think about what you wanted kind of the rest of your life and your education to look like. Eventually, you did decide to pursue education more formally after high school. You decided to pursue higher education. So, talk to me about what made you decide to pursue college and what did you study?
I did my time of active duty in the military. I did the 4 years and then I separated, decided the military wasn't for me. When I separated, I was also newly married. So I didn't want to become the statistic of, you know, fresh, young, fresh, young military person married and not able to provide for his family. So I did the first thing that my resume said I was good at, which was being admin support. I did that for some time and it felt kind of like I was like a circle trying to fit in a square peg, like it just wasn't me. Uh,
Mhm.
But I also didn't necessarily have a higher education to be able to try other paths. So that's ultimately what led me to, why I need to get an associate's degree or I need to get a degree to be able to allow myself to open more doors for myself.
And you decided to start where?
I decided to go to Northern Virginia Community College. The credit union, the job that I worked for, the company I worked for actually had a partnership with that school.
Mm.
So the company paid for me to do education. So I guess that's another cool thing to that we don't necessarily know. I didn't know about that when I was younger.
Mhm.
I try to share that information with my younger siblings. Like, hey, if you want to go to college, s- companies out there, Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies out there that will pay for your education. So I went to Northern Virginia Community College and I started pursuing a IT degree, an associate's in information technology.
It's really good that you noted that some companies, some employers will help you pay for your education. That's an investment that they make in their employees. I think more businesses are starting to do that, or more employers are starting to do that. So that's definitely an option to look into. Okay, cool. So you decided to go to Nova, Northern Virginia Community College, and start your associate's degree to pursue a career in IT. I think folks generally know, and if not, that's okay. But the order of degrees, you can get your high school degree. Next highest is a certificate, which is not quite a degree, but it's still something that you can earn after high school. Then there's the associate's degree, and after that, or higher than that, is the bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree is the degree that we tend to think of when we think of college graduates. It takes 4 years, which depends, but it takes 4 years, and that's like the college degree that people tend to think of. But you chose an associate's degree, which should generally take about 2 years if you go full time, right? Here's one of my favorite parts of your story is you were pursuing your associate's degree and you were at a crossroads about whether you should kind of stop at the associate's degree or continue on to the bachelor's degree. I think I literally remember us like being in the kitchen of your old condo Like, I can literally see it, like, the fridge and then, like, you 2 in front of me, and we're, like, having this conversation. You're trying to decide, "Do I have this job opportunity," I think it was, and you said, "I'm not sure if I should continue on to a bachelor's or should I, get the associate's degree." So, talk to me about what you remember about that conversation, and what did you ultimately decide?
Man, I don't think I have the same,
The same vivid memory that I do.
but I do remember having a conversation with you about whether or not to go straight into a 4-year degree college, 'cause I already started my education at the community college for the 2
Mhm,
year, and I think we had a conversation about should I just forego that and just go straight into the 4-year degree,
mhm,
and I actually did. I enrolled at George Mason University,
mhm, yeah,
and I was enrolled in their a bachelor's in information technology,
mhm,
and I think I took 1 or 2 classes there before I again started to play through kind of the different things that could happen in life, in my head, and I think that's might have been when we had the conversation of should I just, I was so close to finishing my associate's degree, should I
yeah,
just continue that?
mm,
Because on paper, when companies go, when you apply for a job, you're not getting a human, especially not in today's time now. You're gonna get the automated bot that's gonna just sift through whether or not you meet certain check marks, and if you don't, you're gonna get tossed to the side.
mhm,
So the thing that I think we spoke about was we could always continue towards the bachelor's, but let's knock out 1 degree first, and then see how we feel, and see what life looks like once it's done. And I'm ultimately glad I did that because, I did go back to Nova. I did, continue my, working on my associate's degree. I didn't end up finishing it right away. I actually was through the coursework I had already completed within information technology and through my association with the college itself, I was able to get a job immediately within IT as an IT support specialist, IT help desk analyst. So I started working there. So education kind of took the back burner. I cut down how many classes I was taking. I wasn't doing it full time anymore. Then I decided to pursue starting my own LLC. So I started my company, Go Tech Buddy. I had 2 contractors that I hired to assist me with my company. And then I kind of just dabbled back and forth between my own company, going back to working at Nova, and finishing that associate's degree kind of really took the back burner at that point.
yeah. I think the important message about your decision to finish the associate's degree is, I think you were making a smart choice for you. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that they can do that. You don't have to go all the way through to get a bachelor's degree. And you can start at community college, not get a degree, transfer to a 4-year, and then get the bachelor's degree. Or you can go to community college, get your associates, and also transfer to a 4-year to get your bachelor's degree. So again, like, I think you had a path that not everyone knows about before they're starting their education journey. And I think what's most important is that you made a choice that was smart for you, right? Like, you wanted to be able to work sooner rather than later. And that's the conversation that I remember in the kitchen is you told me, like, that was your goal, is you wanted to be able to work sooner than later. And we
Mhm.
also looked at the market in the IT sector. What degree do you need at that time to start working? You had talked to a mentor and they told you you kind of just need an associate's degree. The bachelor's is if you want a higher position.
Yeah.
So I think that that was part of what informed your decision too, or like
Yeah.
that's why you made that choice.
Yeah. It actually, now you're recalling your vivid memories better than mine. If I could, like, one, people say, if you give yourself one tip to your younger self, what would that be? And that would be to find mentors. And I spoke to a few different mentors that all pointed towards the same theme, which is that a bachelor's degree is not necessarily necessary in IT. An associate's degree would be great, but even better than that to get started right away is certificates.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
Different certifications within IT would help not only get the foot in the door, but make myself competitive. So yeah, I kind of pivoted from pursuing the bachelor's to just an associate's and then pursuing
Just an
getting
associate, that
certain.
doesn't mean it's any less.
No, definitely not. And then to looking towards different IT certifications.
Yeah, awesome. So that's why I call that a smart choice, right? Like you could have blindly continued on to the bachelor's degree and that wouldn't have hurt you. It's just a different path, but it wasn't necessarily aligned with what your goals were at the time, which was to start working as soon as possible. And so that's one of my favorite parts of your story is you didn't do what everyone thinks they have to do. You took a path that worked better for you. And fortunately, you were in an industry that was okay with like smaller chunks of education. Not all of them are like that, but IT and sometimes tech can be like that. Um, and ultimately, you made the decision that worked for you. And I remember the relief that you felt when you were like, okay, I'm that much closer to actually getting a degree. And
Mhm.
that was a really cool moment. So I liked that. All right. That was one of my favorite parts of your story. But
Thank
there's
you.
still more to it, right? So you made that decision. You had started the bachelor's, then you said, no, let me complete the associates first. And you worked on that while you were working. But again, there was another turn. So talk to me about what the next turn was after IT.
After IT, I kind of life happened and I was introduced to the idea of becoming a pilot, which was never in a thousand years something that was on my mind as a possibility for myself.
Mhm,
It's not something that was taught to me as, this is an option. So that was a tough one because I had already made a few pivots at that point to kind of do I take another leap of faith again? I
mhm,
went military, I did administration, went into IT, I started my own business. Do I now go into aviation? Spoiler alert, I made the jump into aviation, which that was another conversation surrounding education as well, because the industry from, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago in aviation, in getting to the airlines, it was required you need to have a bachelor's. The
mm,
industry had changed so that you don't need a bachelor's anymore.
mhm,
Associates would make you competitive by itself. And even that, and associates with the industry, the way the industry is, and current, aerospace, aviation, you don't need an associate's degree either. So I decided to go to a trade school to pursue my aviation licensing to get, all the licensing is required to get to the airlines.
mhm,
So without getting too far into that, I made the jump and I became a commercial pilot. I continued and I earned my flight instructor licenses, which allows me to teach other people that are brand new how to fly. During that time, I also did work within a nonprofit sector as a leader within the nonprofit sector, specifically within aviation and Latinos. So I joined what was at that time the Latino Pilots Association. They're now called the Latino Professionals in Aerospace,
mm. Fancy.
and I did a lot of work there as well.
I love all the twists and turns that happen here because I think there's so much to learn from you. You said that you ended up going to trade school to get all of your certifications. And then you just kind of fast forwarded to being a flight instructor, which is fair for the sake of time, right? But I want to highlight for folks listening is that you were still studying a lot and you had tests and stuff. So, yeah, you didn't need a bachelor's degree, you didn't even need an associate's degree, but going to pilot school is still what we call post secondary education and education after high school.
Mhm.
So, it's still a lot of work and still a lot of studying and still a lot of school. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, between my associate's degree and the certifications that I've worked on, or the business I started, or the trade school I went to, the trade school, earning those certifications was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Mm,
I wanted to quit so many times
wow.
in getting the licenses. I'm being 100% honest. If you didn't cry while going through the training program, there was something wrong with you. Like we've all, went home after a long day and just let it out. And I definitely cried multiple times. You had to because amount of effort and confidence to keep going that it required. I feel like at this point today, a bachelor's would be a piece of cake for me. Anything else I pursue is going to be a cakewalk in comparison to that trade school. So yeah, lots of late nights, lots of pulling my hair out. It definitely made me a better student overall.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like sometimes people think, oh, I'll just go to trade school. Like that's the thought. I'll just go to trade school instead of getting a bachelor's degree because I feel like that's easier. Maybe it is. It's shorter. Doesn't mean it's easier. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's not hard work. And one of the myths that I want to dispel through One Degree Hotter is that going to college is, again, not always the concept of moving away after high school and going to the 4 years college, living in a dorm, et cetera, et cetera. I'm here to advocate for all types of education, and your flight school is yet another path. But I think people should not get it twisted. It is still college, it is still post secondary education, and it can still be very rigorous and very challenging. I do remember seeing on Instagram for you all that, like, you were studying super late, or you worked and then you had to study, and then the next day you had to actually fly a plane, like, just a ton of stuff. I don't know all the details, but I've seen some of it. It did not look easy.
No, it did it combined with, the multiple times that I might have almost killed myself while
Oh my god.
literally while
Like flying and,
while,
like, almost crashing?
yeah, flying. I mean, you this is it's what comes with the territory of becoming a
Yeah.
pilot, you make mistakes. The point is that during this stage, you do your best to train hard to learn how to recover from those in-air mistakes,
Mm.
so that it doesn't become something catastrophic. So, it was definitely a journey that I'm glad I experienced. I think like maybe 1% of America can say that they did something like that.
Mm. I think it's such a good lesson too that it was one of the most challenging educational experiences that you've had, and you've had a lot of different experiences. So, for those who are thinking, "Just go to trade school," think about it, could be harder, but always a good path and always a good option for people to consider. So, I love that you pivoted from IT and then started pursuing being a pilot. But also, spoiler for everyone, you took yet another turn. And not completely differently necessarily, but you had mentioned that you had not finished your associate's degree before you moved on to pilot school. So, as you were becoming
Mhm.
a pilot, I'm not sure exactly what the timeline was, but you decided that you did want to finish your associate's degree. Tell me about that decision that you made, what it was like to work on your associates, I think do flight school at the same time, be a husband, be a dad, all those things.
I had finished my licensing and I started working as a flight instructor. I'm, married, and I was a new dad. So it was something that had been hanging in the back of my head. I'm like, I still hadn't graduated. I still haven't graduated. I was so close. I had like maybe 5 classes left to graduate with my associates in IT, of which only one of the 4 or 5 classes that was left to complete was a computer class. So the
Mm,
rest of them were like gen ed classes. Um, so the way I am person, I'm like, I couldn't just leave something half done. I'm like, I need to see it through. Not only that, as a father, it's something that if my daughter were to ever ask me, I don't want to say, oh, I went to college but I didn't finish. No, I wanted to say I finished. I'm a college graduate. So I I was like, let me just speak with a counselor and see what options I have, and I was surprised to find out that if I switched the degree plan from a associate's in information technology to an associate's in general education, I actually had 2 classes to finish, and one of them actually I was able to clip out of. being Latino, I was able to CLEP out of Spanish. So I just took a CLEP
Mm.
exam, which was one afternoon, and easily passed the exam. So I only had one class to actually finish with my associate's degree. I was like, I'm getting this done. And it was hard. I was working full time. I'm, a partner to my wife, which means I, have responsibilities to her. I have responsibilities at home. And I was a new dad. I have responsibilities to my daughter. And then after all that is said and done, they're still trying to have you time, me time, right? On top of trying to finish my professional pursuits. So that was hard. I was driving, for to my flight school in Manassas, which was about 40 minutes away. Then going home, then driving the opposite direction, another 30 minutes to school. I got it done at 33 years old. I'm 35, and I can say that I am an official college graduate. And my parents came out to watch me walk the stage,
In
which
California, right?
from California,
All the way to Virginia.
and telling that part gets me teared up because
Mm.
uh, being an adult learner is difficult. Um, Being on other side of the country while doing all of this is difficult. Other side of the country away from your family. Um, and then having the privilege of my family having the means to be able to fly out here to watch me graduate. While also having my wife and my daughter there was pretty amazing, and it was worth it.
That's awesome. That makes me so happy for you. Like, I had no idea that you were doing all of this, first of all. And it was so cool to see like all of your graduation pictures all the time. I didn't realize like some of the things that you were balancing. I didn't even realize that you had gone back. But I've known you for a long time. I think I've known y'all for like 10 years at this point. And it was so awesome to see you in your graduation and have your family there. I'm super proud of you, man. Like, it's been so awesome to see your educational journey. It truly has. And I'm glad that you got emotional, honestly, because I think it's very hard to imagine finishing the journey. And your journey's not done, but like you did reach like a really good, clean, um, like milestone in your journey, and it felt really great, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you said earlier, certificates are, equally as valuable. And I am now looking at, well, we just moved into our new home. So we have a two-level home now with a stairwell. And now I'm trying to decide between, do we put pictures of our family on the stairwell, or do we put pictures, or do we hang the accomplishments on our stairwell so that every day we walk up the stairs, we can remember how badass we are?
Yeah.
I've earned
Or both.
my aviation, or both. I earned my aviation licenses, and I think like fewer than 1% have went as far as becoming a commercial pilot, let alone a flight instructor. That's a different level of aviation altogether, and that's something that I've accomplished. Not only that, but I've also accomplished becoming a college graduate as an adult.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself.
You should be proud of yourself. And you said a really important thing is you mentioned that you're an adult learner. An adult learner is technically someone who is pursuing education or specifically pursuing college past the age of 25. Even though when you're 18 you're technically an adult. I don't know if they're like looking at like your frontal lobe being fully developed or whatever. But that's technically the definition of an adult learner. And you mentioned that you were 32 when you finished your associate's degree. And I want to point out that more and more people are adult learners. And I think actually more than half or close to half of all college students are actually over the age of 25, right? So that's also why I wanted to talk with you because I think people can feel so like nervous or embarrassed that they're older when they finish or when they decide to pursue a higher education. But there's literally no need to. Like, you're so normal.
Yeah, I think if we're going to be real and honest, I'm not trying to come off as being full of myself
Not at all.
at all. I looked at friends, peers my own age, that did go the college route immediately after high school. And, 10 years post high school, where were they at with their life? And a lot of those friends that didn't, were in the same situation that I was in, where I didn't have my parents' ability to be able to help fund my college education. They were in large student debt because of taking out student loans to pursue college. Whereas this those same 10 years later, I was doing pretty financially well for myself because I went straight into a career, kind of postponed my education, but I went straight into a career. I was extremely smart with my finances once I did have money, and I had a mortgage, something that now afforded us to be able to buy our next home. Those decisions made it so that we weren't in a ton of crazy debt. We were debt free for the longest time. That's something that I I try to share with my siblings as well. And going back to you can use companies to pay for your education. You don't have to go into student debt. Or there's a lot of other options. There's grants, there's scholarships, there's all these kinds of things that can help you. Or just wait down the road, start a career right away, and kind of figure it out as you go. I'm 35. I'm still kind of figuring it out as I go.
Yeah, I mean, financing college is a whole journey in and of itself. Your journey is certainly one of them, and thankfully, it allowed you to not have to take on debt. Like you said, there's grant money, there's scholarships, and there's loans too. That is a real way of financing your education as well. So these are all just different ways that people can pursue their education. And sometimes, if you do decide to go the 4-year route and you have a lot of debt, you know, I hope that that's not always the case. I think there are changes that are trying to be made in the education world so that happens less and less. But yeah, these are all different journeys that we can take. Um, so yeah, thanks for that, Irving. Um, I know that there's one more pivot that you've made. Can you very briefly tell me where you're pivoting to now, and then you're finding an intersection of all these different things that you've done so far? So briefly tell me about that.
I have a final interview um, in a couple days, and
What?
it is the intersection of all all the different pivots that I've taken across my careers. I've actually pivoted from the idea of wanting to pursue the airlines specifically. Part of that actually came from my work in the nonprofit and realizing all the different opportunities that are out there within aviation, not just the airlines alone. Part of that, my perspective changing once I became a father. But I have a final interview for a aviation startup that they essentially create what is a revolutionary type of aircraft. It's going to change the entire travel industry once it does start getting into like main production. It is in a business administration role, but the fact that I had that 10 years of business administration background combined with my knowledge of aviation, combined with my knowledge in IT, think definitely made me a top competitor for that position. Knock on wood. Hopefully, by the time this airs, I'll be at a new company. But yeah, I'm really excited for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely crossing my fingers for you. Super cool that because of all these pivots, starting in the military, doing operations and business administration, moving on to technology, moving on to aviation, all of that has led to this moment now where none of those were opportunities that have been wasted. In spite of all the changes, none of those opportunities or experiences has been wasted. And hopefully it leads to this position where you can blend all three of them. So that's very cool. Crossing my fingers for you. And yes, hopefully by the time this airs, you'll be at that job. Awesome, Irving. So, last couple of questions for you. I like to finish off with this, and you kind of answered this earlier, but two questions that I like to ask everyone. The first one is, what college myth have you busted for yourself?
I would say that college needs to come immediately after high school. If not, during high school. Now you can do some college credits while you're in high school. That's great and dandy. But I think the myth of it needs to get done immediately after high school would be a lie and would be selling Selling it short, I've experienced a lot of life. I've traveled the world since I left high school. I've seen some really amazing places, and I did that all, on my own with my wife, and I'm doing pretty well for myself, having just achieved my associate's degree now.
Mhm.
So I think that's definitely a myth I would say was busted.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to go to college right after high school. There's pros and cons to each of the journeys, going right away and not. But yeah, you don't have to go right away, and learning is forever, right? One of the things I'm hoping for watching the education field policy and innovations and stuff is that hopefully, not hopefully, but like about damn time, um, that the system change so that one can go in and out, like, we don't have to do it all at once because also, like, I wanna learn stuff still, and other people need to come in
Mm,
too. So, yes, you don't have to. It's certainly an option to come in and out or take breaks or start later. They all have their pros and cons. And also, let's cross our fingers and bang on doors of policymakers to change the system so that we don't have to do everything all at once, all of our learning all at once, because learning is forever.
yeah.
All right. So now the last question that I like to ask folks, and you kind of answered this earlier, but what advice would you give to people considering going to college, or in other words, considering pursuing an education after high school?
I'm getting ready to turn 35 here. I'm a father um, to a little girl who's 3, and maybe she sees this 10 years from now when she's getting ready to go to college or make the decision on what she wants to do next for herself. That college doesn't have to be the next step. You don't have to know exactly what it is that you want to do right away. For those that have it figured out and know exactly what they want to do, that's fantastic. And if you don't know what you want to do, who fucking cares? There's so many different careers opportunities out there you have never even thought of. So I would say look at the things that interest you, look at things that you don't know about, explore the world so you can find out a different side of yourself, and maybe find something that does interest you during your travels and kind of figure it out as you go. If there's an experience out there that touches you and then that's what you want to decide to pursue education wise, then go for it. And if you change your mind, that's okay, you know. And then if you change your mind a third time, that's okay. That's the reality of life. We don't all have it figured out. As long as you're taking care of yourself and you're happy, then who cares?
Yep. Agreed. Honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So
Me
that lands. Yeah, that's great advice, Irving. I've worked with so many students who are in high school. We're like, wow, I don't know if I should study this or if I should study that. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't. Because
Mm.
again, like life takes so many turns. Learning is forever. Start with something that interests you now that's going to help you get a good job. And, like you said, like we're in our 30s and we're still trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. So that's really good advice.
You just reminded me of one, that essentially, in working in the corporate sector, what I watched someone that had a bachelor's degree in something completely irrelevant to what they were doing at that time.
Hmm.
Just a bachelor's degree alone helped them get their foot in the door at that company, and today they are in the top leadership at the company.
Hmm.
And they have a bachelor's degree has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a kind of myth of, you need to have it exactly figured out. Like
Yeah, we
you
don't.
don't have to maybe, if you already started something, a degree, just finish it. Me having my associate's degree now has definitely, allowed me to check boxes to be able to get my foot in the door at companies.
Yeah. A lot of it is like what skills you develop and how you market them, like when you're applying to jobs, when you put them on your resume. Yeah, like just sitting your butt down in class and learning stuff is not necessarily enough. Like it's also what you make of it and how you um, take advantage of your learning experiences to develop skills and again, learn throughout your entire life. Well, Irving, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Honestly, like I was also getting emotional at certain points because just your story is on so many pivots, but still pushing through. Um, and, ultimately learning for all of your life. And when something changes, you react to that and you do the best that you can. And that's just such a real story. Like that's what people go through every day. So I hope that people listening feel less alone after hearing your story and feel less discouraged about taking twists and turns throughout their journey because it's very normal and can also be very rewarding to take all of those different turns. It's been so awesome to hear your journey and to see how, despite all the twists and turns, you still became 1 degree hotter. Thanks, Irving, everyone. I hope you were inspired. And until the next one.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.